Hey guys, how's it going? This is Dave at O'Fallon Nutrition, and I've been wanting to do a segment on acid reflux, heartburn, indigestion, all those kinds of issues. We also did one of our radio programs recently on this exact subject, but I thought it'd be a great idea to make a little video, as I can tell this is affecting a huge number of people. So I'm going to start off with kind of a description of this issue, and I'm going to present the standard naturopathic approach. And when I say standard naturopathic approach, I'm talking about books like Textbook of Natural Medicine, written by Dr. Michael Murray, or I'm talking about books like my Clinical Nutrition Functional Approach textbook here. So I'm not just making up these theories. So what I want to get with is first the description. You know, a lot of folks have issues where they have heartburn or they have reflux where they belch after meals, and they get these belches that include fluid that comes up into the throat, often hurts. They might experience things like hoarseness. They might experience issues like a swollen abdomen after they eat, or feelings of fullness are another thing that we're looking for. Now, traditionally, the standard remedies, if you run over to your local drugstore, first of all, are going to be medications like Tums and Rolaids. Those are classic antacids, we would call them. And antacids are simply bases, which are the opposites of acids. They're things that are alkaline in nature that simply, when they're ingested, change the pH inside the stomach so that it's no longer acidic. And hopefully the result of something like that is a reduction in heartburn, or if you have one of those belches that brings fluid up into your esophagus, maybe it doesn't hurt because you chewed on a Tums and that fluid is no longer acidic. Another common form of medication for these issues would be the new drugs that came out in the 1990s known as proton pump inhibitors, or PPIs. Now, proton pump inhibitors have names like Prilosec and Nexium and a whole host of others, omeprazole generically. So these are a little bit more sophisticated than your Tums and your Rolaids. With these medications, the way they function is they inhibit the proton pumps in the parietal cells of your stomach. And you might be thinking, well, what the heck is a proton pump? Okay, a proton, remember from chemistry, is just a positively charged ion, and in this case it's hydrogen. So these proton pump inhibitors inhibit these proton pumps in your stomach from releasing hydrogen. And that positively charged hydrogen is supposed to combine with chloride, the mineral from your diet, to form hydrochloric acid. And that is what we call stomach acid. That's the acid that's intended to digest your food. So we've all kind of been told this idea over the years that, oh, we make too much stomach acid, and oh, if we have heartburn, we're manufacturing too much stomach acid, or oh, we're under stress, we're making too much stomach acid. Well, interestingly, there are a number of studies that I would encourage you to Google that indicate through things like Heidelberg analysis that a lot of folks actually produce insufficient amounts of stomach acid. And in addition to that, stomach acid production declines with age. And there are studies that show that folks over age 60, for example, there are some studies that show that over 50% of the folks tested within the study actually produce insufficient stomach acid amounts. So what's the issue with that? Well, it's thought within naturopathic medicine that insufficient stomach acid is often a culprit behind issues such as indigestion and heartburn. Now remember, I'm not a physician. I'm not here to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease, but I am here to present information to you, and I am here to provide an other point of view. And in this case, this is the naturopathic point of view. So, negatives of these standard remedies. Good thing I've got my Cliff's Notes here. All right, so when we use medications such as these proton pump inhibitors, we're inhibiting a natural process, which is the production of stomach acid within our stomach. Now, the idea of this stomach acid is to actually raise the acidity or lower the pH. When we lower the pH, we're actually raising the acidity. They're kind of an opposite thing. And we want to lower the pH sufficiently to liquefy the food. So the role of stomach acid is to liquefy food. Our stomach is like an acid chamber. We have an esophagus, then we have a stomach, and then we have the beginnings of the small intestine, okay? There are sphincters or valves between the esophagus and the stomach, and again between the stomach and the small intestine. They're known as the esophageal sphincter and the pyloric sphincter. So the stomach is able to close itself off from the tube above it and the tube below it. Purpose being, bathe the food in acid. When that's happening properly, the food is bathed in acid, it's liquefied, it's converted into a sludge known as chyme, C-H-Y-M-E. Chyme is the stomach contents after they've been liquefied, which when they reach a low enough pH, which means acidic enough, that in anatomy and physiology should trigger the opening of the pyloric sphincter at the bottom of the stomach, which then releases the food into the beginnings of the small intestine, where bicarbonates that neutralize the acid are released from the pancreas. Pancreatic enzymes such as protease, lipase, etc. are also released at that time, and further digestion happens. So let's talk about some considerations if we don't make enough stomach acid, or if we use a medication that turns it off. So one of the issues is that stomach acid acts as an immune barrier in our stomach. And what that means is stomach acid actually discourages the growth of bacteria in the stomach that shouldn't be there. There's a common issue known as small intestine bacterial overgrowth syndrome, or SIBO for short. And in naturopathic circles, it's thought that insufficient stomach acid is one of the triggers for SIBO, specifically in that the acid level is not acidic enough to discourage the growth of the bacteria in the stomach, which prefer a less acidic pH. And secondly, there are folks out there that talk about an issue where the ileocecal valve between the colon and the small intestine, another one of these sphincters, may remain open in situations where there's insufficient stomach acid. So, stomach may end up with bacteria there that shouldn't be there, and that's referred to as small intestine bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO for short. So, this SIBO interacts with the food we eat. So imagine a scenario where you have insufficient stomach acid, not enough stomach acid, and then what we are is we're a warm, wet bag of food, right? We have a stomach, it's warm, it's moist, but it's not acidic. So we have food in there, and it's thought that this food then basically putrefies or rots. This is where the issue with feelings of fullness that persist. The food sits in there for longer than the 2 to 3 hours it should if it's been properly bathed in acids. Now, if you've got bacteria in the stomach, or SIBO, what also happens is that the SIBO starts to consume carbohydrates in the food, including lactose and other carbohydrates, and starts to produce gases as a result of that. So you can also have a scenario where these bacteria begin to make gas in the stomach and also manufacture organic acids of their own as a result of them metabolizing the foods in your stomach. So this combines with another anatomical factor, which is that after a few hours, the esophageal sphincter at the top of the stomach, between the stomach and the esophagus, gets tired, and that flap, that valve, begins to open, okay? So now you've got your esophageal sphincter opening, you've got gases being produced by bacteria in the stomach from metabolizing carbohydrates. You may have had high fat in a meal. Higher amounts of fat, unfortunately, also trigger overproduction of stomach acid. So that could mix into this as a factor where you may not be making enough stomach acid to digest the food, but because of the presence of fat that's not leaving the stomach, it might be continuing to cause you to produce a little bit of stomach acid in addition to the organic acids created by the rotting food, in addition to the gases. Now, what can these gases do? These gases also push up on the esophageal sphincter, and they cause these belches or refluxing, where you might get liquid up there. A lot of you, if you start thinking about this and paying attention, may notice that you're belching after meals, okay? Now, naturopathic circles, folks will often be asked, Do they belch after meals? And I'm talking about meals where you don't have a carbonated beverage, where there's not really a reason for you to be belching often. So under this scenario, these gases can create pressure that pushes up on the esophageal sphincter. Then you belch to relieve this pressure. Along with the belch, the organic acids created by the rotting food, and perhaps a little bit of acid related to excess amounts of fat in your meal might be causing acids and unpleasant stuff to get up into your esophagus. And we know that can cause real issues. There are studies and research that show that things like that contribute to esophageal cancer, etc. So besides the discomfort factor, this is not good. Now, in addition to this, you're not digesting your food under this scenario. Without sufficient stomach acid, we can't activate pepsin. Pepsin is one of the enzymes that digest protein, and it depends on hydrochloric acid to function. So another factor besides not liquefying your food is that the pepsin isn't able to function properly in terms of protein digestion, or the beginning stages of that. And also, you may have issues with transfer factor, which is related to B12.